Hi guys,
Hey,
great to see you.
Krista.
Good to see you too.
Likewise.
Yeah, we're here. As I mentioned to Mark earlier, not on a 2 hour podcast, so we're gonna go like straight to what we need to talk about, which is Ultraviolet, which is one of Mark's pieces. There's one on the CDs of Mélomanie that will be released this year. So, Mark, I just wanted to maybe we start with you, if we can talk about um, the name and what led you to write this piece and why it's called this, etc., etc. And take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Christoph. So this was a commission piece, and it was commissioned by a board member of Mélomanie who, as a young teacher, had worked with a teacher by the name of Violet Richman, who had a big effect on everybody who was lucky enough to be in her classes or to work with her. And it was a tribute to her and to her teaching career. And we got to meet Violet uh, around the time of these performances. She unfortunately is no longer with us, but she certainly lived a very long and full life. But we started with the idea of Violet, and that led to a little bit of a play on words with ultraviolet because she was the ultraviolet, and kind of went from there. And knowing a little bit about her interests and tastes, I was pretty sure that we needed to include a lot of color and a lot of percussion. The Mélomanie ensemble is very colorful by itself. And so to expand that, it seemed to me the best way to do it was with percussion. And so that's how we came to develop that piece and invite Chris Hanning to be the guest artist. And Chris was more than the guest artist. He was a really close collaborator and is really responsible for a lot of the sound of the piece. Um, so briefly, just in terms of ultraviolet and what that meant to me, apart from the association with Violet Richman, I was thinking about that part of the spectrum of electromagnetic energy that is just outside the range of human vision, but is in fact visible to lots of different animals. So animals have sight and also coloration, and flowers have coloration that we don't see. Starlings, the common starling, is a lavishly decorated bird, but we don't know that. And we think of Sirius as the brightest star in the sky, but actually there's a star in that same part of the sky called Anhera that is much, much brighter, in fact. It's just we can't see the ultraviolet light. So it's kind of a fact. And of course, it's associated with the spectrum of light and with other energy, including heat. And I was thinking about how this energy, this broad spectrum of energy, radiates from the sun to the earth. And then what happens, right? It creates heat. It gets translated into kinetic energy. So, weather, rivers, animals, and that not only the spectrum, but also that transference of energy from an invisible ray into all this activity that we recognize and enjoy and perceive. That was kind of inspiring. And that is one of the justifications for some of the more active parts of the piece, the more kinetic parts of the piece.
Mm-hmm.
But really, Chris Hanning gets a lot of the credit here for the sound and the nature of the piece because, and we had worked together before, so I knew he'd do something cool. But I told Chris we needed some kind of a percussion kit that could be played very energetically, but along with a Baroque ensemble, which has some soft-spoken instruments. And so based on that, Chris put together this amazing combination of percussion instruments. Chris, do you want to tell us about it?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I don't want to take very much credit for this actually, but when we first started talking about it, I had been working, and I still work with Tom Hedden, who was a former composer at NFL Films and does a lot of commercial music. And Tom and I did quite a few projects together, and one of my favorite sounds was this setup I put together of all these frame drums. So a frame drum, I'll show you a typical frame drum. And, normally you're playing it with your hands like this, that sort of thing. And I am by no means a frame drum expert, but I set them up more like drum set toms. And then I played them with brushes and different implements. And I just loved that quality, especially underneath the microphones. But, you can get this softer quality, especially if you're using brushes. Like this is a wire brush that I use, and here's a plastic brush that I use. And it keeps the volume down, but does give you that energy that we were looking for. Right. And then I started showing Mark some interesting instruments that I love to play. And one was a doumbek. I used to accompany dancers, modern dance classes. In fact, at one point, I think I was doing about 50 hours a week of accompanying dance. And one of my favorite instruments to use was a doumbek. And I'm very proud of this doumbek because Mark bought this for me and gave it to me as a gift. And I just love this drum. And the thing that I love about a doumbek, especially these ceramic doumbeks that are made by Mideast manufacturers, is that you get a wide range of sound, very high to very low. And one of the things you can do is stick your hand in the instrument and actually bend the pitch. So I'll do a little bit of that. I don't know if that's translating through the microphones. So you can get this very high sound to this very low sound. And the overall combination can be very interesting. And so when I showed Mark all these instruments, some of my favorite instruments, I'll take credit for coming up with some of the ideas. I'd also just played an opera with Opera Philadelphia where I had an array of cowbells that I played with mallets, and I just loved that. It was a kind of a mysterious quality of sound. And so Mark put this together in the most amazing way. In fact, I still marvel when I hear the recordings of it. Especially the sound of the spiral trash cymbal, and I have that here too. So that's why I'm in my studio. I can show you this. This spiral trash cymbal. That actually, when I heard the first recording from a concert we did, I couldn't believe the sound quality of this instrument combined with the harpsichord, and how the sound was similar in a crunchy quality way that I would have never imagined. So that's his genius. I just hit the instruments. I don't write them, the parts. But I think the way he put that together was amazing. And then lastly, I'll say another incredible Hagerty instrument here. So this is an ocean drum. But the contraption that this is attached to is very unusual. So the idea was that I could have this on my left side, and we do have pictures of this setup, so I hope we'll show that. And with one hand, I could spin this around to get the ocean sound, and with the other hand and my feet, I could be playing the other instrument. So really brilliant stuff, and it came out. It's magic to me. It's magic. It really is one of my favorite pieces to play because of just the quality of the sound of the instruments and the way Mark put this together in such an interesting way.
Well,
yeah, I wanted to say one quick thing. Sorry, Mark. Because when I showed up for the first rehearsal, we had worked a little bit without Chris. And then the day that I got to the rehearsal when you had set up, the house was full with drums, and I thought, there's no way you're going to overpower us. There's no way. This is like a concerto for percussion and 4 Baroque instruments. The balance is going to be impossible. Yet no. So that was one of my best questions. It's amazing. Everybody shines through the collective sound. We're never overpowered, and it's not like Chris had to necessarily hold back. No, I think with the forces he had, he could let loose in many places. But I was just wondering if you had any that went through your mind to figure out a balance of this, to make this work, like orchestrating, something like this.
That is what's on your mind when you're writing for an interesting combination of instruments. And we certainly did different things too with, for example, the harpsichord. is used very percussively at times in this piece. Thick chords played low on the instrument, very, very abruptly. And even if you know the harpsichord, when you hear it, you actually don't know what it is. And it mixes well with some of the things that Chris was doing. And I have to just point out one more instrument. Chris took a sub-Saharan African drum called a djembe, laid it on its side and put a bass drum pedal to it. So that became our bass. And it has more color and appropriately less volume than a normal bass or kick bass. So yeah, it worked well. Otherwise, Christoph, I think the secret is that if the colors are different enough, you will hear the different instruments. You have to be careful not to cover one instrument with another. So it has to do with what range and what tone quality. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I really cherish about the piece is whoever was the regular ensemble, we all got a moment to shine, and we got these amazing solos too, which was a lot of fun, because you know the people you're writing for, and so not only the instrument but also the individual player, and you know the lush 4-string chords on the violin and on the cello. It's nice also. Then everybody got to step forward and say something, and then we went back to this amazing ultraviolet blend. Anyway,
I think most of the composers who write for Mélomanie really cherish those specific sounds, and then as they get to know the ensemble, the very individual personalities of the players, which adds a lot to the personality of the group and the personality of the music. So you're right, those solos were all written very specifically for the players.
Yeah.
I'll also add with the instruments, you know, there was some changes that occurred throughout the process, and one was the bass drum, because when we first started playing, I actually had a little 16-inch bass drum. It was a converted floor tom, and it sounded too much like a drum set. And we had conversations about it, you know, and I have this big djembe at home. I thought, I think this would work, and I brought it in, and we're like, yes, we found the perfect color for that piece. So, I think that's the other thing that's so wonderful about working with Mark and Mélomanie is the collaborative part of it, where we're not afraid to make changes and sculpt, the piece as we go along, and that's a wonderful part of playing with the group.
Yeah. One more thing, it's kind of the nature of the art of percussion that it really lends itself to improvisation. And so everybody gets a solo, but one of Chris's solos is largely improvised. And he's using some patterns that we've established. But it's humbling because people hear it and they look at me like, how did you write that? And the answer is, I didn't. So that's another great part of the collaboration, when people are actually contributing to the content of the piece, not just the rendering or the interpretation.
One other thing that I think we as an ensemble took away from that, I think we all learned how to count like a percussionist, because some of these complex rhythms that you wrote in there was no way 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we had like 1 E and the 2 E, and you had like special little phrases that I think Kim especially memorized. It was fantastic, yeah. Because and the other thing that I, just remembered, I looked in my closet and look at this. We all wore these ties.
Oh yeah,
that's right. Everybody had a violet tie for the day. That's right.
Yeah, except it's supposed to be invisible, so we should have had invisible ties. Maybe next time.
Next time, yeah.
Invisible ties.
It was a good look, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd just like to say that this is the most enjoyable experience you can have, the most fun you can have as a composer, to work like this with people who are unafraid and have chops, and will take on anything. And that's kind of the spirit of Mélomanie, and didn't hurt to add Chris Hanning to the mix. It was a great project.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I certainly enjoyed it, and it's the group is a wonderful group of musicians. So it's always a pleasure to work with them, and I really enjoy myself.
Thank you, guys. It's great to chat with you like this. And we have to someday turn it into a podcast. Think about it, the 2-hour Ultraviolet podcast.
Something to think about.
Okay, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.